This guy poured me a beer. It's what is it? 10, pretty much 10 in the morning. This is the earliest beer I've had in a while. So
Yeah.
thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
No, I was actually pretty happy when you said it. I was like, well, looks like it's gonna be an interesting day.
It's outside, so it's, I'm glad we're inside drinking some beer.
Cold beer. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. I will not say the name of this beer, product placement.
Fucking cheers, brother. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, man. Me one more time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. A mason jar too. I really like that. That's wicked.
Big mason jars here. I can fit like fucking like 2.5 of these or something. So
Every single guest has mentioned the mason jar, and it's kind of like a goal now.
Speak the same way I would for the most part around my parents. You know, just throw that filter on.
Well, that's
For now, until I drop a hard C-bomb tomorrow on the radio, and you go, JD, do you want to do this together full time? I'll go, yes.
I didn't want to say anything.
That was weird. I woke up to a text from Leanne, our manager. Yeah. Don't fucking say a word to the press. And I was like, what are you talking about? What the fuck? Yeah.
oh my god.
But that one makes for a really funny story because I just blame that for the reason why All Else Fails fell apart or why I'm not in the band. I'm like, yeah, we had labels looking at us. We were almost signed. We had stuff in the works. And then our drummer killed a guy. And they're like, what? The amount of people that have no idea. Like, yeah. Wow, that is fucking metal. Like,
oh man.
And the cool thing is my company Chocolate is the first food manufacturing company in the country, the first to get a processing license, right? I'm on my way. It's not, I don't know if I'm Walter White or Willy Wonka or like, I don't know what to call myself, right? And it's kind of funny because in a lot of the stock forums that, because we had a company invest, we had a cannabis company invest in my chocolate firm, and they're publicly traded. And there was a bunch of banter back and forth on a lot of these online stock forums, you know, Brad's just a big mouth. Brad doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. And this was back before we had our license, right? And I was complaining vocally and publicly about the processing time that Health Canada takes with respect to processing a license. It was ridiculously long. And, everybody was poo-pooing me. And I basically went online in typical, Brad form, right? And I just shut them all down, right? Now everybody on these stock forums and a bunch of friends and locals are calling me Chalk Norris now, right? It's like, oh yeah, get Chalk Norris to respond to that reply online. Let's watch what happens, right? So
going into the writing process then, what was the most surprising thing to you about the writing process maybe?
So surprising would definitely be actually the world building. I when I was younger, I wrote a few rough adventure stories and stuff, like really bad. I've since forgotten them or lost them or did both. But I always felt that I didn't have the capacity to lay out geography or lay out like, here's what the town looks like or whatever. And I don't go all the way into it where you're like reading Hemingway and you're like 4 pages describing a bowl of fruit. God, move on, Ernest, let's go. Yeah. But just enough that it frames the scene. If it's really important, I'll draw it to the foreground. But I'm like, I don't want to be bogged down with like 40 pages of exposition. I'm like, I want to get to the action. This is what I'm here for. Characters and action and the story moving ahead.
You can talk about it like a lot, like if you want to do stand-up, but the biggest thing is just kind of like do the jump and do it. And so I did. And so like my very first show, it was at Broken City downtown. And it's one of the biggest, longest open mic nights in Western Canada. Oh, wow. Right? Like Zach Galifianakis has dropped in and like it's totally unannounced. You know what I mean? And so I did. And so I brought a lot of people. I brought I think 15 people. And so I did my first set. Usually, the kind of the template for each open mic is 5 minutes. I did 9.5 minutes. Holy fuck. I was on stage mid-joke because it's so hard to kind of know your time, you know what I mean? And I did really well, as well as you can do for your first time. And James Moore, the producer of the show, had to go. He cut my mic. And he went on the PA. He was like, "Hey, buddy, you got to get off now." So yeah, so that was my first show. a little embarrassing, but I'm glad that it went like as well as it did. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was my first show.
Well, there had to have been like a certain, qualities, because like I understand like what you're saying with confidence kind of have to be a big one. Like anyone can fucking talk, but it's going to take that confidence to go on stage and publicly succeed or fail.
Absolutely.
So like what qualities maybe did you really notice that, hey, like other than the confidence, like what were maybe some signs that I could really do this?
I have a thick spine. You know what I mean? You really need to have like a spine and thick skin to do that. You
Yep.
know what I mean? You have to realize that you can have that. Like I've had some shitty fucking nights doing stand up. Like I've gone up on stage and like no laughs, like working out new material, and that that's what it's all about. Like going up on stage and be like, hey, I'm gonna say something I've never said tonight. Like I don't know if it's gonna work, and if it doesn't work, it is soul crushing. Like it fucking will make you want to hang yourself when you get home. And so like the biggest thing, other than like having a thick skin, having a spine, is just perseverance. You know what I mean? So it's really tough. And like I tell my friends who want to try stand up, just keep doing it. You know what I mean? Like the audience isn't gonna remember the show 2 weeks from now if you eat dicks on stage. Right? So just keep writing, keep going. You'll find something that lands. You know what I mean? So it's just perseverance. Just kind of shoulder to the wheel, just kind of keep going. Absolutely.
At the place we went for breakfast called Eggs and More. Love that place. Love the Eggs and More. So many good plugs. So anyway, so we got there. First thing I walked in, the first thing Gene said to me, he turned to me, he goes, noobs. That was some badass fucking drumming, man. And I was just like, okay.
Chills.
I was like, I can die now. I'm teching for my idol, and then he's telling me that my drumming is good. So you just never think in a million years that stuff is gonna happen. So
People don't care. I don't know. I just feel like it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
If we removed likes in general off all social media platforms, wow, that would be awesome, right? Because then no one could really, because I did read a study where social media is almost kind of like a slot machine, right? You're scrolling down, refreshing. You don't know what you're going to find, right? You're just hoping for something, but you just don't really know what it is. And
Good metaphor.
so then let's talk about, the chemical imbalance then.
Sure.
What is, when you dig down a little bit more into it, what is the chemical imbalance that produces that?
So, I read through my textbook again to make sure that I got all of my facts right. So, in depression, what's going on in the brain is an abnormality. I can't say the word. In the neurotransmitters, specifically serotonin and norepinephrine, which I can also never say right. So that it's probably not a normal amount of uptake. So that's where a connection that scientists feel is the connection there biology wise. What's going on in our brains with depression, but I read a really interesting paper by Dr. Charlotte Blees that I just thought made some really great points. And she talked about how we kind of need to not put so much emphasis on the biological causes of depression. Certainly, that is a relevant thing. I mean, if you're suffering from depression, there's likely some kind of chemical imbalance going on there. But scientists like to take the biopsychosocial approach. So it's kind of combining biology, psychology, and social influences so that we can understand mental health more holistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was super cool, that campaign. For everyone only listening, we're not going to describe the photo, I'm sorry.
Yeah. We actually I just want to say about that photo. We took one where
Well, definitely, because it's kind of weird because like your job like falls into so many, like it's hard to predict into so many different subcategories in it. So when you're talking to that many people, how do you really have not a bad day, if that makes sense, when you're talking to so many people? Because everyone has bad days, right? You know, how do you deal with a bad day when you have to talk to so many people that morning?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I have a really good answer because I feel like the answer is different depending on what you're going through. You know, like everybody has those mornings where they wake up and they just don't really feel on. Those are the worst kinds of mornings in radio because you're like, well, we got to find a way to be on, you know? So whether it's like running around the building a few different times or slapping yourself or just caffeinating, I guess like those are some of the easier ways. But I think along the way, especially doing a morning show, I've had to learn like little tips and tricks and just little things that work. Like sleep is the biggest priority for me. It means I'm really boring between Sunday and Thursday because if it happens after 8 o'clock at night, I'm probably not going. Yeah. Because I have to go to bed, you know, because I wake up at 3:15. So prioritizing sleep is big. Eating really well, as boring as that sounds. I'm about to say a bunch of really boring, unfun stuff, but you know,
How do you do that? That's fucked up.
Zero sleep, zero.
Like, I don't eat. Like, what time do you start making those fucking pancakes?
At least, yeah. I'm a professional,
Yeah.
so I've seen the response on the album is amazing. How's the tour going? Like,
It's fun, right? Especially with some back-to-back nights and whatnot. We're doing the weekends, right? So it started right from January 4th. The album released on January 3rd, and then January 4th, you know, we played in Calgary. Following weekend was Edmonton Red Deer, and then it was Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, and then we're doing Banff, and then we're doing Calgary again, and then Edmonton coming up at the end of February on the 29th. So we're playing quite a bit now, which is good. It's got some momentum going, so it's been really smooth so far. A little bit of wild partying, a little bit. It's not too bad, right?
I entered the book in a contest back in the summer.
Okay.
Because Amazon has different contests as the year goes. And regrettably, the size font they ended up giving me was like 2. Kid you not, it was like micro print. The book was only like 120 pages thick, and I'm like, man, this felt like a 300-page book before.
Yeah.
And then the sizing that I had to go with to get in the contest, and then the font, I was just like, oh, this is really, really hard to read. Good thing I have one on my laptop because I can just go back and read it whatever size I like. But I'm like, oh man. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, so part of the reprint is also to give people the bigger size print because no one should have to strain with size 2 print. Like, this is a really good story, except I need a monocle to read it.
Yes.
So.
Tuned to D from E by ear pretty well, but
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think so. They made us do transcriptions when we were in music school. So every like once a semester or like a couple times a semester for different classes, they would make you do a transcription of some kind. So you had to pick whatever song for however long of a duration, and then you had to like lift it by ear and then perform it, like write it out and then perform it.
Oh, okay.
So that definitely helped. All the ear training courses that we did in school, they started really simply. You know, it was like, what's this interval? And they'd play like C to E, major third, you know, and then as time goes on, by the end of it, they're playing full songs, and you have to write out like what the chord progression is that they're playing and what all the melodies within it are. So I think that was a fairly gradual process. And then definitely out of school, now I'm like almost 100% ear. I still use charts and write stuff out by hand for my own good. Like whenever I'm performing for somebody, I'll write out the hooks in standard notation on my charts, and then I do what number charts. So like instead of A, D, E, I'd write 1, 4, 5.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then if they change the key on me, it's super easy and it's not a big deal for me to just like change on the fly rather than having to think.
Yeah.
Now A is G and D is C, you know, it's just like 1, 4, 5 and G now.
Yeah.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Everyone knows what's in the box.
What's in the box?
Oh no!
Oh, you son of a bitch.
What the fuck you, Danny? You're not on the fucking podcast right now, right?
There we go. Here we go.
Oh fuck! I don't even know.
Go. Let's do one quick thing before you end this video. Just